All right, the date is May 9th, 2019. The time is 10:35 in the morning. Present in the Internal Affairs Division office are Christina Trujillo, Nick Boyd, Sergeant Ryan Bullard, and myself, Detective Lilia Alonso. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct an interview of Christina Trujillo, who is an employee with the Sacramento Police Department in the capacity of police officer. This is an administrative investigation on the charges of neglect of duty and improper tactics involving Jared Robinette and Terrence Mercadale. This is an administrative investigation only on these charges. Do you understand that?
Yes.
However, since the allegations indicated that a crime may have been committed, I am advising you that you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say may be used against you in court. You have the right to the presence of an attorney before and during any questioning. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you free of charge before any questioning if you want. Do you understand each of these rights that I have explained to you?
Yes.
Having these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to us now?
No.
Although you have the right to remain silent and not to incriminate yourself, your silence can be deemed insubordination and result in administrative discipline. Do you understand that based upon the authority vested in me by the Chief of Police, I am ordering you to answer all of our questions?
Yes.
Any statement made under compulsion of a threat of discipline cannot be used against you in a later criminal proceeding. However, if you do not answer our questions truthfully and fully, a charge of insubordination may be imposed, which could result in discipline up to and including termination. Do you understand this is only an administrative investigation?
Yes.
Do you understand the allegations?
Yes.
Do you understand that I am ordering you to answer our questions, and that if you do not answer them truthfully and fully, it could result in disciplinary action up to and including termination?
Yes.
For the record, please state and spell your name.
Christina Trujillo. Christina is Christina. Trujillo is Trujillo.
Did you graduate from the Sacramento Police Academy?
Yes.
When did you graduate?
In 2007, March, I believe, or April. I should know this.
Do you have any prior law enforcement experience?
No.
Have you had any kind of specialized training or assignment? Actually, scratch that question. What's your current assignment and shift?
I'm currently assigned to the South Gang Enforcement Team. I work shift.
How long have you been in your current assignment?
Since December, and prior to that it was part of the same team but the shot spotter position.
Okay. What was your assignment and shift in March of 2018?
I was assigned to the South Get shot spotter team.
South Get?
Mm-hmm.
G-E-T?
Yes.
Have you had any kind of specialized training or assignment with the Sacramento Police Department?
Yes, it's the gang enforcement team.
Shot spotter and gang enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Just TDYs.
Such as?
To the Neighborhood Crimes Unit, to Crime Suppression Unit, the Crisis Negotiations Team, and Peer Support.
Prior to this interview, I provided you and your representative with your body-worn camera footage from March 18th, 2018, relating to CAD call 18-82449, a video recording of your interview with homicide detectives on October 10th, 2018, relating to SPD case 18-82449, your statement and observations relating to SPD case 18-82449, a CAD call printout for call 18-82449, an audio recording of radio traffic relating to SPD CAD 18-82449, a transcription of the radio traffic relating to SPD CAD 18-82449, an aerial photo of 29th Street from SPD case 18-82449, a copy of your post-training record, a 2018 SPD CPT First Aid CPR Update Course Outline, a 3-page Law Enforcement Tactical Lifesaver Course Outline, a 90-page Tactical Lifesaver Course Student Guide Booklet, General Order 580.12, revision date 10/9/2012. General Order 522.02, revision date 5/16/2017. And General Order 525.07, revision date 4/26/2017. Have you had a chance to review these?
Yes.
And for the record, these general orders were the current policies in place on March 18th of 2018. We're here to conduct an administrative interview with you regarding SPD case 18-82449, an officer-involved shooting which you were involved in on March 18th of 2018. Prior to our interview here, have you read or reviewed any materials pertaining to this case, 18-82449, such as reports, press releases, statements, video?
Yes.
What would those be? What would those entail?
My observations and the documents that you provided. I've also seen stuff on the media.
Anything in particular that you've seen on the media when you say that?
Just like news stories and the DA's release of their decision.
Okay. Have you received training in emergency first aid and CPR?
Yes.
And specifically what training?
I've had multiple trainings throughout my career. I marked it here on my post training. Do you want me to go over
If you're able
the-
just to refer to the most recent one leading up to March 18th of 2018. So anything most recent and prior to that date.
I had an update in February 26, 2018.
And that was SPD first aid CPR update?
Yes.
Okay. Did you also attend what's called a tactical lifesaver course?
Yes, I did.
And when was the date of that?
October 9th, 2014.
And was that an 8-hour course?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe the tactical lifesaver course as to the material it covers, any practicals that you participate in, or lesson plans or anything like that?
Do we have this here? Can I look at that? I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one
Yeah.
more time?
And it's not referring to specific lines on these here, but can you describe the tactical lifesaver course as to the material it covers, practicals you participate in, lesson plans?
Yeah,
based on what you
in
remember?
general, from what I remember, they obviously taught us some first aid, and CPR reviewed that. We also talked about just our situational awareness and rescue situations, and just providing medical care, whether for officers or suspects or community members.
Community members. Okay. Have you attended department training that talks about cover and concealment?
Yes.
Can you explain what that is?
Cover is a position where more of safety, where you're going, it would, if you're being fired upon, you would have some type of protection from that. Concealment is more just to not necessarily protect you from if shots are fired, but more of just to hide your position and give you a position of advantage, but it won't necessarily protect you.
As a police officer, especially working patrol, how often would you utilize cover and concealment?
Often. Very often. Daily.
Have you been trained the concepts of contact arrest teams?
Yes.
Can you explain what that is?
There's different types of contact arrest. I know there's like a 3-man, 5-man, and usually you have different roles within that arrest team and different assignments. You have officers that provide cover, and then you have lethal cover, less lethal. If a shield is available, somebody to use that, and somebody to go hands-on and verbal. So everybody's given kind of a different assignment in those arrest teams.
Okay. Have you been trained in the concepts of cover officers?
Yes.
And can you explain what that would be?
Cover officers is you're providing, I don't know another word for cover. You're covering your other officer, providing in case there's a threat. You're responsible for basically protecting your partner and providing some type of force or how would I best explain it without using the word cover? So as a cover officer, I'm providing protection for my partner or whoever it is, and I'm whether I have to provide lethal force, less lethal, it depends on the situation, but I'm trying to protect them from being harmed.
Are the use of contact teams and cover officers a common practice in police work?
Yes.
And is that for officer safety reasons?
Yes, it is.
Have you received training relating to tactics and strategies for armed suspects?
Yes.
And have you utilized those tactics and strategies throughout your career?
Yes.
Is distance a key factor to officer safety?
Yes.
And can you elaborate a little bit on that, about distance?
So my training has taught me that the more distance is often better, because suspects can close that distance very quickly, and more distance usually allows you more response time. Unfortunately, some of our tools, like the taser, though, don't work at certain distances very effectively. So there's different, depending on some of the less lethal and stuff is even lethal. There's certain levels of distance that it is, what is the word I'm looking for? Effective, most effective.
Have you been involved in any officer-involved shootings other than this case?
Yes, but not as a shooter.
Can you describe what that incident or incidents were?
I don't remember the year, but it was as a peer support role. I wasn't on scene at the time of the shooting.
Yes. Would you agree that all Sacramento police officers have been trained and have some of the experience in the areas that we've talked about here?
Yes.
Referring to your observations written by you in relation to this case, did you review any video, whether body-worn camera or any other kind of video, prior to writing and submitting your observations?
Yes.
And which video would that be? Which videos?
My body on camera.
Any other videos?
No.
Okay. And then referring to your statement that you gave to homicide investigators on October 15, 2018, do you remember what videos you were allowed to watch prior to the interview with homicide detectives?
I believe it was only my body worn camera.
Okay. What type of equipment did you carry with you on the date of this shooting, so March 18th of 2018?
Everything that I'm wearing now, except for I was wearing a tactical vest instead of the regular police uniform, but I had my handgun, my taser, my baton, and I had just been issued a less lethal shotgun that was in our patrol car.
Did you have your department-issued body-worn camera equipped on this day?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, was all of your equipment, including your body-worn camera, functioning properly at the beginning of your shift on March 18th of 2018?
Yes.
Were you on duty March 18th, 2018 at 9:26 p.m.?
Yes.
And what was your identifier?
I was gang 5-7.
Gang 5-7?
Yes.
Did you have a partner you were working with?
Yes.
And who was that?
Officer Nick Taylor.
Nick Taylor?
Yes.
As a gang unit, what were your responsibilities for your shift and assignment at that time?
We were shot spotter officers at the time, so we handled shot spotter calls and activations, but we also assisted patrol with any shots fired calls, and we were just available to assist with calls for service when they were busy and we weren't available.
What hours did you typically work as a gang unit?
Typically it was 1700 to 0300.
Were you in an all-black SPD patrol vehicle equipped with emergency lights?
Yes.
Were you in full SPD uniform, or were you kind of indicated earlier you were dressed maybe a little differently? Can you describe again what kind of uniform or SPD uniform you were wearing at that time?
I was wearing tan tactical pants, like 511 pants, a black shirt with a black tactical vest over that had police on the front and back and large yellow writing. It had SPD patch on it and my duty belt.
And was your partner, Officer Taylor, dressed in the same way as you were that night?
Yes.
Officer Taylor was driving
Yes.
to this event, is that correct?
Yes.
On March 18, 2018, 21:26 hours, did you respond to a call for service in the area of 29th Street regarding a car cloud or car burglary which had resulted in an officer-involved shooting?
Yes.
Did you respond code 3?
Yes.
And where did you respond from?
We were actually in the process of clearing a prior call. I don't remember the location of the call and exactly where we were at, but I remember we were trying to clear that call to go to the other one. And I'm sorry, what was the rest of the question?
Just as far as where you responded from.
Yeah, it was from another call, I believe in Sector 5, but I think that we were headed, I remember we were headed like northbound at some reason, and then we heard the radio traffic and diverted. I don't remember exactly what street we were on.
Can you summarize the information about this call you knew at the time when you were responding?
I remember hearing that there was a foot pursuit, which is what diverted us at the time. Can I refer to my
Sure.
report?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So there was, over the radio I had heard that there was one at gunpoint and that there was a subject fleeing on foot. So that's what made us respond to their location, to the call.
An SSD Air Unit Star responded to this call as well, correct?
Yes,
And to your knowledge, was Star on scene for this call prior to your arrival?
yes.
Do you recall any information that Star had broadcasted regarding this call prior to your arrival?
Yes, I remember hearing shots fired on the radio. That they said there were shots fired.
Star advised.
I believe it was Star.
Can
yes.
Can you describe some of the things that you were considering or thinking about during your response to this call?
One, how to direct my partner there, but also just the direction that was safest to get to the call, because I don't know which way the shots were fired. I didn't know who was hurt. There wasn't a lot of details, but I do remember at one point, I think it was Officer Mercadal had said that the subject was down, but I didn't have any further information.
The CAD call indicates that at 21:31 hours, you and Officer Taylor arrived on scene for this call. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's about right. It was about 5 minutes. Yeah.
And did you actually respond to 29th Street as opposed to?
I don't remember the exact addresses, but I remember we were directed in by the air unit. He directed us, I believe, by his light, or the helicopter light. He was kind of directing us because their cars were mapping at one location, and we were trying to figure out exactly where they were at. And if I remember correctly, there was the helicopter light was directing us to where to go, which house they were in the backyard.
Okay. 29th Street was the actual location of the officer-involved shooting, to your knowledge, then?
That sounds correct.
Is that correct?
Sounds good, yeah.
And you said
Yes.
that basically what directed you to 29th Street was the helicopter spotlight
Yes.
directing you there?
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to refer to your body-worn camera footage from this call. Does this appear to be your body-worn camera footage that we have pulled up here?
Yes.
Okay. And then we're going to be looking at time and date stamp here. So it's 2018-03-19 and then TTOM 04226, or I'm sorry, 2601, Z is in zebra for Zulu time. So I'm going to fast forward just a bit here.
Copy, 9-10. Keep going to the south, two-story house, keep going to the south. Houses, right where my light's at, right there. They're in that backyard.
So I'm going to stop at 042845 on the video here. You appear to arrive on scene. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, with that time, 0428 Zulu time would translate for Pacific Standard Time as 21:28 hours. Does that sound correct? Or, as it says, 0428 and 45 seconds, it would be 21:28 and 45 seconds Pacific Standard Time.
I'm not sure because I think the whole date is wrong. So I think the whole time is wrong altogether on my body camera because it's showing the 19th also. I think this happened on the 18th. Correct?
It
Okay.
did, correct. And so what Zulu time does is it goes forward, what is that, approximately 7 hours or so.
Oh, is it?
So
Okay, I'm
going
sorry,
back
I wasn't familiar, so yeah,
to
okay.
Pacific Standard Time would be March 18th. And then from my estimations on it, it would be about 21:28 hours on there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Sound about accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, in referring to page 1 of your observations, you indicated that you and Officer Taylor arrived on scene at about 21:31 hours. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then based on your training experience, can you explain the time discrepancy here? Roughly 2 to 3 minutes from your body-worn camera, 21:28 hours as to 21:31 hours on the CAD call, or on your report.
Yeah, I don't know why the discrepancy, if it's just, if they're just not synced, or I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what the difference is. I don't know. I don't remember if I hit F4 to mark us on scene or if we did it over radio and then dispatch did it for us. That could be, but I don't remember.
North side, there you go. North side house.
Watch out, watch out.
Yeah, Charles 5-4. I want everybody to know you're fine. No officers hit. So take down in the backyard.
So at 04:29:05, you and Officer Taylor appear to join Officers Robinette and Mercadal in the backyard of 29th Street after your Code 3 response. Is that correct?
Yes.
And to your knowledge at this point, Officers Robinette and Mercadal had just been involved in a shooting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do we need?
I don't see it.
He hasn't moved at all.
He hasn't moved at all.
Okay.
Okay, so at 04:29:15, you asked, he hasn't moved at all, and Officer Robinette replies, he hasn't moved at all. Is that correct?
Correct.
On page 1 of your observations, you indicated that you observed the suspect was face down on the ground in the backyard on the west side of the residence and was not moving. I was unable to see the suspect's hands and could not see if he had a weapon or not. He was wearing dark clothing and I could not see any injuries from where I was standing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you describe for me the setting of the backyard of what you perceived at that time, where this occurred at, as far as lighting, the vegetation, or any potential obstructions, anything like that?
Yeah. So we went through on the north side. When I entered the backyard, I remember it being dark, but the helicopter's light was kind of what was giving us light at the time. Without it, and when it moved, it was obviously very dark in the areas it wasn't covering. The grass was overgrown, and there was I remember seeing some furniture, maybe like a bench, and like on the patio area. There wasn't, from where we were standing, I remember there wasn't anywhere to get closer. This was the cover spot, I guess, in my opinion, where they were standing. Because I couldn't remember anywhere that I could go to get closer where I felt safe, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Do you think we're going to need?
Right now,
Yeah. It's okay.
not
No,
yet.
no. You can't see his hands, right?
So at 04:29:28, just kind of want to back up here on what sounded like it was said. Officer Taylor appears to ask, you want to get him detained? And Officer Robinette replies, not yet. And you affirmed, no, we can't see his hands. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Based on what you had observed and knew at this time, would it be accurate that you were of the understanding that the downed suspect you saw had been shot by officers and had not moved?
That was my understanding.
And at that time, did you feel it was safe enough to detain the suspect, as Taylor suggested, based on what you had observed and what you knew at that time?
I did not feel it was safe.
You did not feel it was safe?
No.
Okay. Were you aware at that time about any kind of crime that the downed suspect may have committed, or if he was arrestable by anything or for anything at that time?
I didn't know the details, but part of the reason that I leaned towards what Officer Mercadal and Robinette and what their delay was because I knew that they had witnessed what happened. I didn't. They had more firsthand knowledge, and I didn't want to honestly overstep what they had more knowledge of what had happened. It was what they saw. I didn't fully know. So if they believed he had a weapon, I was concerned about that.
No. We can't see his hands, right?
So 04, 29, and 30, can you hear what Officer Taylor says right
He
there?
says he has one hand by his face, but I honestly couldn't see it.
He has one hand by his face. And
It's something along those lines, but yeah, I couldn't. I kept trying to look and I couldn't see, but
and Officer Taylor's referring to the suspect?
yes.
Okay. Let me back up there. We had a little coughing in the background here.
Sorry.
See about something that was said. It's okay. Okay, 04, 29, and 39. Can you hear what Officer Robinette sounds like he's voicing on the radio at all?
I couldn't quite hear it on
Play it
here.
again.
Sorry.
Can you
He's
understand?
asking for a body bunker.
Officer Robinette's asking
Yes.
for a body bunker.
Mhm.
Okay. Can you tell who he's asking?
375.
Okay. What is a body bunker?
It's the ballistic shield that we utilize, and at the time, my understanding was most of the sergeant's vehicles were equipped with it. And I'm not sure if the watch commanders also, but yeah.
Theoretically, would having a body bunker or ballistic shield assist officers in making a safe approach of an armed suspect?
Yes.
And this would be to protect officers by shielding them from any gunfire that the suspect may potentially send downrange towards officers. Is that correct?
Not any, but most, yes. Or handgun, yes.
Let's call it to him, see if he's okay.
Police department, can you hear us?
We need to know if you're okay. We need to get you medics, but we can't go over there to get you help unless we know you don't have a weapon.
So at 04, 29, 56, you suggest to officers to call out to the suspect
Yes.
to see if he is okay. Is that
Yes.
correct?
I wanted to see if we can get any type of response.
Okay. And at that point, Officer Mercadal appears to call out, "Hey, can you hear us?" Officer Taylor says, "Police department, can you hear us?" And then you say, "We need to know if you're okay. We need to get you medics, but we can't get over and get you help unless we know you don't have a weapon." Is that correct? And can you explain the reason for doing that, for saying those things?
Well, I wanted him to let him know that we wanted to get him help. At least for me, I wanted to get him help, but I didn't know if it was safe for us to get there because going through training and my experience, I've heard of stories like this, or at least one story that sticks in my mind. So I didn't know if he was playing possum, and I didn't want anybody to get hurt. But obviously, we want to get him aid. But I couldn't see his hands, and I didn't know if it was just safe or not.
You guys, you good right here? Good here. You guys, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
get the correct address, please.
Okay.
I think Charles put it out. Well, we put, yeah, I thought it. We put it out. We put it out.
Okay. Sir, can you move? Can you hear us?
So 04, 30, and 15, you call out to the suspect again, "Sir, can you move? Can you hear us?" Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's it. after that. Okay.
He came up and then he kind of approached us, hands out. Yeah, he was
0430 and 27, you appear to motion with your left hand forward and you say, and that's it. He didn't move after that. And Officer Robinette replies, he hasn't moved. And Officer Mercadal is saying, he came up, he kind of approached us with his hands out. Is that correct?
Yes.
What were you motioning with your hand there when you were asking this with your left hand? Do you remember?
If he had moved at all, and I don't know if they understood me correctly. I was trying to make sure because I'm kind of behind them, and almost my body camera has a better view than what I could actually see. But I wanted to see what I'm referring to at this moment is he moved when we made the call to him. Has he not moved at all? Because I remember asking initially if he had moved, and that was referring to before I got there. This is more referring to once we made the call outs to him, if he has. And I think maybe Robinette might have understood, and he said no. I'm not sure if Mercadal did or not.
Okay.
Okay, that first incoming unit, go to the gang in his car. It's the unmarked car, but it's parked directly for the house. That unit, I need you to check on those.
Let's have the next unit just bring a non-lethal in case he's pretending, but let's just, in case.
So at 0430 and 44, you say essentially, let's have the next unit bring a non-lethal in case he's pretending, or just in case. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Based on your training experience, what is a non-lethal?
It's weapons that we have that are not likely, if used appropriately, to cause any type of lethal or cause death. So here I'm referring to specifically our non-lethal shotguns.
Okay. I provided you with General Order 580.12 Less Lethal Weapon System, revision date 10/9 of 2012. Would you please read aloud the highlighted portions?
Yes. Policy. It shall be the policy of the Sacramento Police Department to deploy and use less lethal weapon systems as instructed in department training in order to maximize the safety of all individuals involved in an incident. A. Definitions. 1. Flexible baton round beanbag. A less lethal 2 3/4 inch 12 gauge shotgun round firing a Kevlar bag containing 40 grams of lead shot at a velocity of 280 feet per second FPS. The drag stabilized projectile delivers 112 feet per pounds of energy on impact. Flexible baton rounds are discharged from a dedicated 12 gauge shotgun that is distinguishable by an orange buttstock and foregrip. This round provides accurate and effective performance when fired from the approved distance of not less than 5 feet, but not more than 50 feet from the target. Deployment criteria. 1. Less lethal weapon systems shall only be used in a manner that is consistent with department policy and training guidelines. 5. Officers shall not deploy a less lethal weapon system unless specific information reasonably indicates the potential for the system's use. The circumstances of each incident shall dictate the reasonableness for the deployment. Use of less lethal weapons. 1. Use of a less lethal weapon system shall be consistent with General Order 580.02, use of force. 5. Situations for use of the less lethal weapon systems may include, but are not limited to, A. Self-destructive, dangerous, and/or combative individuals. C. Circumstances where a tactical advantage can be obtained. Tactical considerations. 1. If possible, when a less lethal weapon system is to be utilized, a sufficient number of officers should be assembled to assist with the physical custody of the target subject. The number of additional officers and their responsibilities shall be dictated by the dynamics of the incident. 2. Unless extraordinary circumstances exist, consideration should be given to the following responsibilities. A. Deploying officers. At least one officer to discharge the less lethal weapon system. Multiple officers with less lethal weapon systems may be utilized in a single incident. The use of canine and the conducted energy device may also be appropriate in concert with less lethal weapon systems. B. Protection officers. A sufficient number of officers prepared to deliver appropriate force cover options given the immediate circumstances. C. Custody officers. A sufficient number of officers who are responsible for handcuffing and restraining the subjects. 3. Under exigent circumstances, nothing in this order shall prohibit an officer from deploying and discharging a less lethal weapon without requesting authorization or having the presence of additional officers.
So in referencing your video here, what did you mean by having someone bring a non-lethal in case he's pretending?
I wanted just someone to bring it to be able to have that option to use it if we needed to. I didn't know if he was pretending or not, so it was just another option for us to have to use in case something were to happen upon our approach.
I need to check on the people, I believe. Charles, we'll be checking. Copy. Next unit, I need you to get that original complainant. We need to get him in pocket.
Hey,
Hey, go get a non-lethal.
go get a nut.
Oh, hey, Sergeant. There's one in our car on the roof.
There's a,
One.
yeah.
0431 and 17 on your video, Officer Taylor says there's one in our car on the roof. There's a shoddy, correct?
Yes.
What did that mean?
That's the less lethal shotgun, the bean bag shotgun.
I'm gonna, are you good with me grabbing, just in case he's, I mean, we can't tell, so I'll just grab it just to have it.
So at 0431 and 27, you verbalized for someone to get a less lethal, just in case we can't tell, and then you say, I'll just grab it just to have it. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then you begin to go back towards the front of the property, towards your patrol vehicle for the purposes of retrieving the less lethal shotgun. Is that correct?
Yes.
In referencing General Order 580 1.12, less lethal weapon system, even though the less lethal shotgun was not actually deployed or used during this incident, it was considered. After reviewing that general order that we did, do you feel that this incident on March 18, 2018 would have been a practical use for it at any point?
Yes.
Why?
Because if we were to approach and he became, if he was pretending to be either injured or not, but he became a threat again, but not necessarily a threat where we would need to use lethal force. If he was not compliant or anything like that, I wanted to be able to have that available to use.
Now, prior to you leaving towards the front of the house, it appears that you, as well as other officers here, had initially stayed at the northwest corner of 29th Street as opposed to going out into the open area of the backyard. Can you explain why that is?
That is where we felt that there was cover.
Okay. That would be a position of cover at that
Yes.
corner. Okay. At that time, did you have any concerns of any potential additional suspects?
No, I was only aware of the one.
On page 1 of your observations, you wrote, he, meaning the suspect, did not respond to officers, and I did not observe him make any movements. I was not sure at this time if the suspect was injured, the extent of his injuries, if any, if he had a weapon, or if he was pretending and refusing to comply. I feared the suspect may have a weapon and could have possibly used it against officers upon approach. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is this the reasoning for not making the approach to the downed suspect at this point with officers Robinette, Mercadal, Taylor, and yourself on scene?
Yes.
And referring to the tactical lifesaver course that you took, can you articulate any lesson plans or materials from that course which you think would apply in this scenario as to not approach the suspect or is why no approach to the suspect was made at that point?
I remember being taught that obviously we want to be able to rescue a person, but we have to be able to do it safely upon approach so that we don't get injured or killed while trying to do so. What was the rest of the question? I'm sorry.
Just as far as that training from the Tactical Lifesaver course, why the delayed approach of the suspect was done, why it had not been made to that point of anything that you can draw from that course that you took from Tactical Lifesaver.
Yeah, it has to be done safely. That's the reason.
I've earmarked page 29 of the Tactical Lifesaver course student guide. Would you please read aloud the highlighted portions?
Assessment and treatment guidelines. Tactical casualty care during law enforcement special operations is performed in 3 phases. The first is situational awareness and scene safety. In the first phase, you are about to enter a tactical environment and a possible crime scene. Your safety is paramount, and the possibility still exists that you or other officers at some point may come under hostile fire. The tactical medic must at all times be fully aware of the surroundings and any potential threats. The likelihood of having to draw your weapon and engage a suspect with deadly force is possible but extremely unlikely. 1. Situational awareness and scene safety. Determine if your surroundings are free of immediate life-threatening concerns. Do not attempt to provide first aid if your own life is in imminent danger.
Does this material appear to be consistent with your training regarding the Tactical Lifesaver course that you attended?
Yes.
In your opinion, would this information that you just read aloud apply to this incident on March 18th of 2018?
Yes.
Can you explain why?
Because we didn't know if he was still a threat to us and if our lives could be in danger upon approach if we didn't approach safely. Because we didn't, again, I couldn't see his hands. I wasn't there at the initial time, but my understanding from what I knew is that he likely had a weapon, and we didn't approach because we didn't know if he still had the weapon, especially if we couldn't see his hands. So I didn't know if he was faking or not, and I didn't feel it was safe at the time to approach.
Have you been involved in or are you aware of any similar situations where law enforcement delayed their response for an immediate rescue of a suspect that law enforcement had shot or injured?
Can you read it one more time? I just want to make sure
Yeah.
I understand it fully.
Have you been involved in or are you aware of any similar situations where law enforcement delayed their response for an immediate rescue of a suspect that law enforcement had shot or injured?
I have not been involved in one other than this here, but I know that it sure.
You had mentioned an incident to me
Yeah,
when we were talking prior.
I think it was Sergeant Weinrich, if I'm remembering the correct sergeant. I was taught, or I wasn't working here yet, but I had learned of a story where a suspect had been injured, and I don't remember all the details because I was not part of it, but I remember being taught that it was probably involved in either, I think it was a collision, and officers were giving him orders, and he was saying that he was injured and he couldn't get out or something along those lines. So officers, I think including Sergeant Weinrich, had gone up to approach the car, and the suspect fired at him upon approach. And so that was one of the lessons that I took from that. It's just obviously we want to make sure, because this can happen, that they can fake an injury or pretend to be more injured than they really are.
Okay. Any other specific incidents or anything like that?
Not that I can think of, but I know that from my experience, I know that officers always want to make sure that it's safe to do the approach first.
Excuse me.
Okay. The helicopter air unit Star was on scene throughout the entirety of this incident, correct?
Yes.
Do you recall if it was considered by any of the officers on scene in asking the air unit to visually verify if the suspect was still armed or a threat to officers while you were waiting?
I don't remember that. Like, I mean, I don't know if it did or not, but I just can't remember.
Okay. Do you feel the air unit could have realistically verified if the suspect was still armed or a threat, or as a result you could actually make a safe approach of the suspect?
I don't think realistically. I mean, we were closer than the air unit, and I think we would have had a better view, but I've never actually even been in the air unit, so I don't know, but I don't think so.
043208, you appear to attempt to retrieve the less lethal shotgun from your vehicle, and it sounds like you verbalized that you can't get it out. Is that
It
correct?
wasn't working. I don't know why, but it wasn't releasing it,
So-
so we don't put it in there anymore.
I was going to ask you, did the lock malfunction, or was
Yeah.
something stuck to your recollection?
Yeah, it was malfunctioning, and I don't know why the car was on, and I couldn't get it out. I even tried all the other ones, which I know don't work, but they weren't working.
Let me back up just a second here. I wanted to draw your attention to the radio traffic while you're trying to do this. Now it sounds here like Sergeant Morris is heard on your portable or on the radio that he's requesting fire to respond code 3. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was it your understanding at that point that officers had made their approach and detention of the suspect at that
Yes.
point? On page 2 of your observations, you wrote, I briefly stood in front of the residence in order to direct medics to the suspect upon their arrival. Is that correct?
Yes.
And let me...
Elwood, 29th Street. Identify yourself as the suspect.
So you appear to be looking around the front driveway of 29th Street with your flashlight. Was this that portion that you're referring to in your report and waiting for medics?
Yeah, and I know there was a lot of officers arriving on scene too, so I was just trying to direct whoever needed to come to our location, including the medics.
A copy if you can handle that intersection and let's go 3 houses south of the south of that. Get the tape there, and then I need to get it to the north. So the crime scene tape at
Let's just have them stop there.
29th Street. Identify.
These are back there. They're back there. Just have them stop.
0432 and 51. Officer Lundgren appears to arrive on scene and asks you, where's Robinette? And you direct him towards the backyard of 29th Street. Is that correct?
Yes.
Start blocking this off. Okay, get it.
So it's 043307. Sounds like an officer is heard calling out something about rescue mask,
Yes.
mask CPR, and you reply, okay, I'll get it. Is that
Yes.
correct?
I don't know if we have it.
Charles, I want out on the original complaint. Copy, Charles, I want the original complaint. Next unit, we need to really check, or just need another unit to help that other unit that was checking those other 3 backyards where you ran south from.
So 043329, you retrieve a resuscitation mask and rubber gloves from the trunk of your vehicle and then proceed towards the backyard. Is that correct?
Yes.
And for the record, what's a resuscitation or rescue mask?
It's a mask that we use over the subject's face when we're providing CPR and providing breaths to them.
Are they coming in? Did you sit here?
Now, 043357, I know it's dark here, but you seem to arrive back here where Officer Taylor is. Can you explain what Officer Taylor is doing here?
Yes, he was giving the subject chest compressions at the time.
And would these be CPR chest compressions?
Yes.
Here, I'll do it.
5 more units out here. I need a 2-officer car here.
No pulse, no breathing?
That's it.
0434 and 18, you ask no pulse, no breathing, and Officer Taylor replies no. Is that correct?
Yes.
On page 2 of your observations, you had written, I also observed the suspect was bleeding from what appeared to be the right side of his chest. There was blood on his shirt in this area. It did not appear that the suspect was breathing and he was unresponsive. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. To the best of your understanding, the suspect had been struck by officer's gunfire at that time, correct?
Yes.
Did you have any kind of emergency medical kit on your person at that time?
Just the CPR mask, which I had retrieved from my car.
Okay. And you had indicated earlier that you had noticed that the suspect was bleeding from the chest area?
Yes.
Okay. Based on your training and experience in first aid CPR, does the training also cover treatment of individuals who are bleeding, such as applying tourniquets, bandages, direct wound pressure?
Yeah, so tourniquet wouldn't apply because it wasn't like, I didn't see anything on like his limbs, so it wasn't something we can tourniquet. The direct pressure, we could have applied there, but if it was in his chest area, it's, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's an occlusive dressing where there's an opening. I didn't have that. And I know that from what I could hear is that fire was actually arriving on scene and being directed in. Because he wasn't breathing also, we were trying to get him to breathe, which was why we were trying to do the CPR.
Okay. And based on any injuries you had observed on the suspect or that you were aware of, would it have been practical for you to assess for the application of tourniquets, bandages, direct pressure to apparent gunshot wounds while also conducting CPR chest compressions?
Sorry, can you read it one more
Yeah.
time?
Based on
I need that one.
That was a long one.
based on any injuries that you had observed to the suspect or that you were aware of, would it have been practical for you to assess for the application of tourniquets, bandages, direct pressure to any gunshot wounds while also conducting CPR compressions?
I don't think it would have been practical. I think at the time that was just kind of our priority. That's the word I'm looking for. From what I recall, it just happened quickly. We could see that he was injured. I knew that tourniquet wasn't working because I didn't mention it. I remember I usually typically carried one in my vest, a tourniquet. I don't remember if I had one on that day, but I typically did. But I knew a tourniquet wouldn't work in this situation. So this was the medical aid that I think that was most important
Which was?
to be provided, which was the CPR and getting him air, getting him a pulse.
Precious? I'm good.
Here. You do breath first thing. You got gloves on already? Can you put that in space, please? And then just tell us if you're ready.
So at 04:34 and 30 seconds, you appear to give your mask to Officer Lundgren and direct him to put the mask on the person who deceased, Stephon Clark's face, while you get your latex gloves on. Is that correct?
Yes, because I saw he had gloves on already.
And Officer Lundgren puts the mask on the suspect as you directed there.
Yes.
On page 2 in your observations, you wrote that you gave the mask to Officer Lundgren because he had latex gloves, and you instructed Lundgren to put the mask on the suspect's face and to give him breaths. Is that correct?
Yes.
And this was done to expedite the process of rescue breathing.
Yes.
Based on your training experience, do first responders such as fire medics or hospital staff typically treat any kind of patient without first putting on latex or rubber gloves?
Not that I'm aware of, but no, no, I don't think so.
And this is done to prevent contamination or transfer of bodily fluids as a safety measure. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is a rescue mask used for the same reasons of preventing contamination or transfer of bodily fluid substances as a safety measure?
Yes.
On page 2 in your observations, you indicated that you observed Lundgren blow into the inlet of the CPR mask between Officer Taylor's compressions, but did not see the suspect's chest rise. Is that correct?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, was that resuscitation mask functioning properly?
Yeah. I should have mentioned in my report, I didn't see his chest rise, but I could see the air going into his mouth, because I remember seeing I don't know if his cheeks or like the air was coming through the mask, but it wasn't making his chest rise.
And then you also indicated in your observations after this that you had checked for the suspect's pulse near his right carotid, but could not feel one, correct?
Correct.
Can you describe where the right carotid is?
It's just below your ear and kind of along the jawline. It's along the carotid artery. And you could typically, when you put your fingers there, usually I do 2, and you can feel kind of a pulse. And that location is one of the locations we're taught to check for a pulse.
Let's see.
Copy, deck, 3 units. Let's get them to
Come on, buddy.
the back of the door.
04:34:38, you say, "Come on, buddy." Is that correct?
Yes.
And who are you saying this to?
The subject, Stephon.
Okay.
Left end of this steel.
Come on.
Shot for directed.
You want me to switch?
direction.
Yeah,
I
try-
don't
try
see
giving it a breath,
anything that
see?
would have been struck, but there is one structure on that property.
Yeah.
I'm labeling it as Meadow.
Got it.
Let's just get it off over there.
I'm good. I'm good.
Back up a second here.
Spare copy, deck, 3 units. Let's get them to
Come on, buddy.
the back of the west end of this steel.
Come on.
Shot for directed.
You want me to switch?
direction.
Yeah,
I don't
try
see
giving it a breath,
anything that
see?
would have been struck, but there is one.
Now, 04:34:46, Lundgren appears to begin giving breaths to Clark. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you offer to trade places with Officer Taylor for compressions, but Taylor advises he'll continue. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
I think he said he was good or something along those lines, yeah.
What's the purpose of trading places as it relates to CPR?
It's easy to get fatigued because you have to push hard and so many times repetitively and at a certain pace. So if he was getting tired, I would offer to take his spot so that it would be more effective if he was tired. But he was doing good. I just offered and he said he was good.
Structure on that property.
Yeah.
I'm labeling it as Meadow.
Got it.
Let's just get it off over there.
I'm good. I'm good. Okay.
You can check that building.
Come on, buddy.
Okay, there it is. So is I having your device that? Number 336. Sorry, can I get that address again?
Come on, buddy.
So 04:35:00 and 04:35:17, you again say, "Come on, buddy." And you had said this earlier that you were saying this to Clark.
Yes.
Again, can you explain your mindset why you're saying that?
I was hoping to get a response and I didn't want him to die.
Hey, Buster. Meadowview. It's literally the field that this all these houses back
Yeah,
up
let's
to.
move.
There's
Let's get that.
One structure that's to the southwest of where this occurred. That's the structure on check.
Five.
Where's that going to be?
Nope. 2 breaths.
043542, Officer Taylor directs Officer Lundgren to give 2 breaths to Clark, which Officer Lundgren does that, correct?
Yes.
You guys just got one?
Yeah, just one.
Okay, fire and medics appear to arrive on foot at this point, correct?
Yes.
Cut his shirt off, please.
Yeah, let's get those cuffs off of him. Let's get those cuffs off of him too.
043552, you appear to advise officers to take the handcuffs off Clark here, is that correct?
Yes.
And can you explain why at that point to do that, the handcuffs?
I didn't feel he was a threat at this point, and also I didn't know. I figured in my mind it might be easier for them to provide him medical care without them on. I didn't know for. I'm not a medic, but that's why.
Okay, do you know where he's hit? He's still on the chest. Yeah, he's got up.
043557, medics ask officers if they know where the suspect is hit, and Officer Taylor advises them somewhere in the chest, is that correct?
Yes.
Peter, hold your light. I got shoes in the pocket. No.
29th is
0436 and 07, fire and medics begin cutting Clark's upper body clothing off here, correct?
Yes.
I provided you with General Order 522.02, emergency care for individuals under police care or control, revision date 5/16/2017. Would you please read aloud the highlighted portions?
Yes. Policy. It shall be the policy of the Sacramento Police Department to provide emergency medical treatment to individuals under police care or control while ensuring their safety and that of others during treatment. A. Emergency medical treatment. 1. Officers having any doubt concerning a person's condition shall request emergency medical assistance. 2. Officers shall provide first aid to injured parties if it can be done safely. C. Emergency medical authority. 1. The highest level paramedic, emergency medical technician, EMT on scene is in charge and responsible for the examination, treatment, and transportation of medical patients. 3. Law enforcement does not have the authority to order anyone to stop performing cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, or to interfere with a paramedic/EMT. Once CPR has been started on a person, it may be legally discontinued only when A. Everyone working on a patient is too exhausted to continue, B. A medical doctor orders everyone to stop, and C. The person starts breathing.
In your opinion, when was the suspect under police care and control as stated in General Order 522.02?
When was he in the care?
Under police care and control. I'm referring to page 1 of that.
I would say the entire time until the medics arrived. In my opinion.
On page 2 of your observations, you wrote that officers continued CPR until medics arrived on scene and took over medical aid. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at what point in reviewing this were you under the impression that fire had taken over medical care of Clark?
As soon as they started handling the person, the body. So at the moment they transitioned from Taylor stopping the chest compressions, and the medic came in and took his position. Does that make sense?
Okay. Took Taylor's position.
Yeah.
Fire and medics pronounced Clark deceased, is that correct?
Yes.
For the record, in reviewing body-worn camera footage, approximately 4 minutes and 57 seconds elapsed between when officers' gunfire ceased to the point that officers first made physical contact with the suspect, Stephon Clark. Approximately 59 seconds after that, Officer Taylor began CPR on Clark. Does that sound accurate?
Yes.
And in reviewing body-worn camera footage, approximately 3 minutes total of CPR treatment by SPD officers was conducted on Clark. Does that sound accurate?
Yes.
In your opinion, do you feel you were able to provide first aid to the suspect safely, as stated in Section A, subsection 2 of that general order that you had reviewed, 522.02, any sooner than when you made your eventual approach of the suspect?
Sooner, no. But at the time that we did, I felt it was safe.
Can you explain why you don't feel that you would have been able to provide first aid safely any sooner to the suspect?
Because at the time, based on the information that I knew, I didn't know if it was safe to approach. At that time, I didn't know, again, if he still had his weapon and if he was faking, I couldn't see his hands. So I didn't feel it was safe without more tools, and we didn't have the shield. I would have liked to have the shield, but yeah, I think we needed a little bit more.
Would it have been reasonable to direct fire and medics to enter the scene and medically treat the suspect prior to officers safely securing the scene and arresting or detaining the suspect?
No.
Why?
If it wasn't safe for us, in my opinion, it wouldn't have been safe for them.
In your opinion, do you feel it was reasonable for officers to delay their approach of the suspect for the amount of time that they did?
I believe so, yes.
As we already referred earlier, that the suspect involved in this was Stephon Clark. Did you know Stephon Clark prior to this incident?
No.
To your knowledge, had you had any interactions or dealings with Stephon Clark prior to this incident?
No.
Refer back to your body. Okay, fast forward.
Okay. Wall real well. 3 and 5 hooked up.
Yeah.
At 04:42, it's actually right around 35, you appear to mute your body-worn camera here, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall the reasoning at that time for that?
For some reason I thought I was told to, but then I can't really remember if it was because of that or because we were done. I wasn't contacting the public anymore. It was just, I was done contacting the public.
Let me fast forward just a little further here.
You need a break or anything, Christina?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, my voice is just
No, no
fading
problem.
a little bit.
We're just a little over an hour.
No, I think I'm okay. I just probably getting the sniffles and my voice is a little hoarse. Sorry.
Okay. So at 05:01 and 10 seconds on your body cam, you deactivate your body-worn camera, correct?
Yes,
And do you recall the reasoning for it at that time?
I was told to.
Do you recall by who?
I don't. I thought it was a sergeant, but I don't remember which one.
Do you recall any kind of order going out over the radio by the watch commander or lieutenant to have all units not directly dealing with the public to deactivate body cam or video at that time at all?
I don't recall. I don't know if it happened or not, but I don't recall it.
I provided you with General Order 525.07, revision date 4/26 of 2017, body-worn camera. Would you please read aloud the highlighted portions?
Policy. It shall be the policy of the Sacramento Police Department to utilize a body-worn camera in a manner that will assist in criminal prosecutions or civil litigation by providing a recording of the incident that may supplement an employee's report and help document professional police conduct. A general. 1. All officers issued a body-worn camera are required to wear and use their body-worn cameras while working in uniform. A uniform is to be considered the standard uniform as well as any apparel, for example, tactical/raid vest, that identifies the wearer as a police officer. 2. Body-worn camera video provides additional information regarding an investigative or enforcement contact with a member of the public, as body-worn camera recordings provide only a limited perspective of the encounter. All other available evidence, such as witness statements, officer interviews, forensic analysis, and documentary evidence should be considered before any conclusions are reached. 3. Body-worn cameras should assist in the following. A. Documenting an initial police response. B. Employee responsibility. 2. Employees assigned a body-worn camera shall C. Affix their issued body-worn cameras to their uniform at the beginning of their shift in accordance with training and the manufacturer's guidelines. The body-worn camera shall be worn for the entire shift. C. Required activation of the body-worn camera. 1. This policy is not intended to describe every possible situation in which the body-worn camera should be utilized. Not all situations will clearly start out as necessitating the activation of the body-worn camera, nor will all events have a clear ending when the body-worn camera is no longer necessary. 3. Employees shall activate their body-worn cameras during any enforcement or investigative activity, whether self-initiated or in response to a dispatched call. Examples include, but are not limited to, the following. C. When conducting pedestrian and vehicle contacts. D. While responding to any in progress, just occurred, or any other call for service in which the fleeing suspect and or vehicles may be captured leaving the crime scene. E. When responding to calls reportedly involving weapons or violence. G. When pursuing a suspect on foot. H. During Code 3 responses, including vehicle pursuits, regardless of whether the vehicle is equipped with an in-car camera. I. While executing searches of individuals, vehicles, buildings, and other places. K. When conducting arrests, detentions, and or citations. Deactivation of the body-worn camera. 1. Except as listed below, once activated, officers shall not deactivate their body-worn cameras until the investigative or enforcement activity involving a member of the public has reasonably concluded. If enforcement or investigative activity with a member of the public resumes, the officer shall reactivate the body-worn camera and continue recording. 2. Employees may deactivate the body-worn camera at any time based on their discretion in the following circumstances. A. When the employee is discussing tactical or confidential information with other law enforcement personnel during briefings or during conversations with confidential informants. C. When it is necessary to discuss issues or concerns with an employee, supervisor, doctor, nurse, or paramedic in private. 3. Details regarding the reason for deactivation should be recorded and documented when appropriate.
After reviewing that, in your opinion, do you feel you complied with that policy?
Yes.
Why?
I was no longer contacting the public. I was not investigating the crime or, again, contacting the public, and I was transitioned into a role of peer support, which is a confidential position.
Would it be fair to say, do you feel that you comply with this policy as far as your activation of the body-worn camera?
Yes.
And why?
Because we responded Code 3 initially, and obviously there is a crime in progress, and we were still dealing with the subject, which is a member of the community public.
If you were to respond to this call again, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Well, yeah, the policy's changed, so I would leave it on and not mute it.
Considering if we were to go back to this date and time when this policy was still in effect, in these policies which we've reviewed, is there anything that you would have done differently at all in reviewing this?
No. No.
Detective Alonzo, you have any follow-up
I don't.
questions?
Oh, no.
Nick?
No, ma'am. No, sir.
No. Okay, the time is... Oh, no, I know. 11:50. I was just making sure what time it was.
Is there anything else relating to this matter which we have not covered that needs to be added, clarified, or changed? If so, I am ordering you to provide that information now. After you leave this interview, should you remember anything that is different from or in addition to the information that you've given today, I am ordering you to contact Sergeant Bullard immediately. I am also ordering you not to discuss this matter with any other department employee. Do you understand these orders?
I
And
do.
we didn't give a chance for her to answer on that if she had anything.
Do you have anything else related to this matter that you would like to add, clarify, or change?
Not that I can think of at the moment, no.
Okay. And do you understand the order of not to discuss this with any other department employee?
Yes, I do.
11:51 hours.